Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for everybody around the world. It's wonderful to be here. And I'm going to now, I think the best description is I'm going to apply a contrast to Joe's presentation. To work on. So the title of this really was Regenerating Canals, Different Approaches, and which is slightly strange possibly for us because, excuse me while I just check. Waterway Recovery Group, my organisation, is better known really for restoring canals. But that's just pedantry really, isn't it? Because what we're actually talking about here is recovery. And that's why we are called Waterway Recovery Group. It doesn't really matter whether you're restoring them from scratch or indeed just regenerating them or giving them, without wishing to sound too soppy, the love that they deserve. And that is actually why we're called Waterway Recovery Group, even though we're mainly based in restoration, because we genuinely believe that all waterways are in need occasionally of waterway recovery. Most importantly, I need to also say at this point that we are Waterway Recovery Group. We work in the UK, and we are part of the Inland Waterways Association, which is the charity that speaks for waterways across the whole UK. Right, so moving on through that pedantry, for which I apologise, I'm hopefully going to give you a brief introduction to the voluntary activity of Waterway Recovery Group. And indeed, it's not going to be quite as dramatic as Joe's presentation, but I think there's some areas of commonality. But really, I want to talk to you primarily about how WERG and the Inland Waterways Association are moving forward in our field of restoration, what we actually think is the most important thing. And then back to Duncan for question time. So, our official title is the National Coordinating Body for Voluntary Labour on the Inland Waterways of Britain, which I apologise, it made sense when it was chosen in the 60s and 70s, but it's not very snappy now, but that's life. And as I say, we are part of the Inland Waterways Association. Our funding comes from them. And so what is Waterway Recovery Group? Well, we have 6 regional groups who are based around London, for instance, or the northwest of England, or indeed a forestry group that does a lot of forestry type work, and they're kind of all over the place. They have no regional base, but we still call them a regional group for reasons of organisation. And we run, generally speaking, about 25 canal camps a year. Now, to explain, canal camps are our week-long residential working holidays anywhere around the country, where about 18 people will come together, 18 volunteers will come together, and there will be a leader, and we'll work on a project that's actually in the Midlands there that you can see. That might be bricklaying. We also have a collection of vehicles and plant. We also run an awful lot of training around the whole waterway sector, trying to get them up to speed, make sure everybody's working to a safe and efficient way of working. And we also join in the running of festivals, where we're basically trying to spread the word about waterways and generate support, and also perhaps generate some volunteers. That's quite handy as well. But mainly, that's kind of a really rough breakdown of our activities. Now then, what sort of work do we do? After the excellent presentation from Joe, I think this is what people traditionally associate us with. Basically just wallowing around in a load of mud, barrowing it around, shoveling it around, something just looking very, haphazard. Hopefully I'm going to prove to you that it has moved on from there. But before I move from that slide, can you just look at it, and just to say, that is actually an arch bridge that you're looking at. You can just past the wheelbarrow, you see the channel, and you can see the abutments of the bridge. But hopefully you can see that, crucially, for an arch bridge, it's not really very arch, but we'll get to that in a minute. If you could just remember that bridge. We do an awful lot of much more skilled work as well. This is one of our bricklayers assembling, this is in Gloucester actually, assembling a brick overspill weir again that was being constructed. Yeah, we also do some quite serious civil engineering side. That is, those coping stones you can see sprung apart there are not inconsiderable. They are not, it's not light. That is a serious bit of engineering that needs doing. So yes, we are known for demolition and also our construction. That's two of our bricklayers you can see there, actually on the same block, actually. And also for our heritage work. Obviously, we are a heritage organisation. Everything we do includes heritage. It's just sometimes it's heritage concrete. But yeah, that's an example of a stone-built bridge in Wales, actually, which we restored, absolutely. And that's the sort of work that we also do. I'll mention heritage a bit later on. But yeah, that's kind of all work we do. And sometimes, however, it really is serious construction. That is an entirely volunteer built lock chamber construction being built from scratch. It did look very similar to one of Joe's slides of lock 3 and 4 in terms of laying down steel, pouring concrete. That's a concrete pump you can see in the background. Yeah, and lots of work. In fact, the only thing different to Joe's thing is that is a completely new lock. Didn't exist before. It was a requirement to actually build it. That's down in Sussex. So yeah, that sort of work, absolutely. We find that volunteers can do a great deal of work. And just to circle back, that is that self-same arch bridge that you actually saw at the start of the what sort of work presentation. That is after we have put the arch back up, and that is ready for the parapets and ready for construction now. So yeah, although it felt like at the start we were just wallowing around in mud, absolutely what we were doing is getting ready for serious engineering, serious construction skills, and serious attention to detail, which I think is probably usually my take home from anything. It's attention to detail is what actually matters. Anyway, sorry, I digress. That's the sort of work that Waterway Recovery Group do, and also there are lots and lots and lots of individual restoration societies around the UK also doing this sort of work. And pretty much we are all volunteers. I have to admit, feeling deeply envious of Joe and his what we might describe as considerable resources, yeah, and the projects he's running with paid employees. But yeah, we're all volunteers coming from all sorts of walks of life. And most importantly, I'd just like to reinforce the fact that we are part of the Inland Waterways Association, who support us. And there is a theory that IWI does the campaigning about waterways, and Waterway Recovery Group does the actual physical work. And I'm going to, well, hopefully in this presentation, I'm going to show how that's either changed or at least joined up. Yeah, so that's our history. That's what we've been doing and everything. What about now? Because it has, obviously, I'm sure not escaped your notice, we've had a global pandemic, and we're also using the word austerity a lot, which has impacted on funding, etc. So just as an illustration, obviously those photos were assembled over 10 years or something, an illustration of our work, because I led a camp on John Robinson Lock on the Cotswold Canals just a few weeks ago, as it says. And here we are pretty much at the start of it. Can anybody see the missing item if I say that's a photograph of John Robinson Lock? The answer is yes, there is no lock there. Absolutely. You can, again, see the bridge in the background. Keep an eye on that, because that will be appearing. But basically, this is a survey we did early spring, late spring, sorry. Yeah, and this is announcing our intention to go and work on John Robinson Lock, which we were fairly sure it was down there somewhere. So we started excavating, got some excavators, started excavating, and that is it a little while later. That is the self-same bridge you could have seen. And also, yeah, it clearly was a very infilled block. We discovered, ironically, it was actually infilled mainly with construction waste from the construction of the motorway, which is only a mile further down the canal, which actually cut off the canal and is the main barrier to restoration of the waterway. So we were just digging out there the construction waste again. But that is our lock indeed, and we set about excavating it. There, two of our volunteers working on the excavation side. Oh, that's the same thing, but from the different angle. We did indeed discover quite a few items in the lock. Those are the remnants of the lock gates, which we removed. And again, obviously, there is a considerable archivist resource on this section. So there are two things. Finding the gates is always exciting just from an archive and heritage point of view. And that obviously we removed, and they've catalogued that, and there's quite a lot of paddle gear and various bits of metal work associated with it. The second reason it's always exciting for us volunteers is you know that basically if the gates are basically in there, then probably the rest of the chamber is in good condition as well, because all they've literally done is infilled it. They haven't demolished it, they've lifted it, they left the gates in position. But anyway, that's just knowledge, yeah. So again, just showing that it's amazing what you can find in lock chambers when you actually get around to excavating them. Once the chamber is cleared, our scaffolding crew are able to go in and able to scaffold it all out. This is where it's going to resemble, very similar to another one of Joe's photographs of a scaffolded out lock chamber. That's our scaffold team. I promise you they do have confident expressions on their face. Yeah, and that is the finished chamber. Oh, well, not finished, but that is the chamber excavated, cleared out, scaffolded out, ready for reconstruction, as you can see. And that allows us to evaluate the brickwork, some of which is in not terribly bad condition, some of which is in really, really bad condition. And although that doesn't look very much worse for Joe and anybody else of the engineering bent on this call, that wall that you can actually see has been displaced by about 6 inches because the bywash chamber is running around the back of that wall, under the bridge and out of the bridge, and somebody has blocked up that culvert at the bottom end, and therefore it's filled up with water on a regular basis, burst out, and hydraulic pressure has just pushed that wall out. So we're going to have to do something about that. But again, that theoretically is just take it down all the way and put it back up again, and obviously fix the bywash culvert. But that's basically the wall. Once we've actually got it all scaffolded out and cleaned up, restoration of the brickwork up to the level. And again, this goes back to your heritage plan, because that's a major refurbishment of a complete patch. And it can be clearly seen as a patch, a modern day fix that is in new brick, but other areas actually reclaimed brick, reworked, brickwork that we actually found during the demolition actually has been put in because it's appropriate. It's appropriate to do it in old brick. It's not appropriate to have done a patch in old brick, in new brick. Sorry. Yeah, and then it's just assemble the coping stones for that and get ready to put them on. Just a couple of little problems that occurred. Firstly, as I say, it was filled with construction waste, as well as the coping stones that have been pushed in, and they'd also filled it up with some coping stones from another lock. So that we had that. It wasn't just simply a case of let's find all the coping stones. You had to find all the coping stones and then decide which ones fitted your lock, which wasn't easy. Also, the fact that the civil engineers in charge of this, who are designing the overall level flow through this section of the canal, decided that they really needed this whole lock lifting by 150 millimeters. So we actually, just as we were about to put the stones on, we discovered we had to put another 2 courses of bricks on. So we had to lift them all off again, put 2 courses of bricks on and put the stones back on, including the lovely coin stones that are actually installed from that. And again, we had a problem of, we thought we'd found all the coin stones, and then we found that actually, because they were of a different radius, they were clearly, some of the coin stones were from a different lock. Such is life. But this is all part of the joy of assembling your jigsaw. And hopefully you get them all at the right level, and you get them actually horizontal and actually at the right level. So obviously there's a continual checking of the work. But again, I say this was all done by volunteers. And here are, well, interestingly enough, one quite aspect of the well, is it an aspect of the pandemic, or is it just as we're getting started again? This year, this is the standard kind of shot I use to illustrate that we have volunteers from all over the place that are, you know, this year actually, instead of the average age of a volunteer being about 25, they were probably closer to 55 this year. Now, we could probably interpret that hundreds of ways. Let's not worry about it. Just saying, for some reason, volunteers, we appear to have aged dramatically. Not that that's a problem. We're perfectly happy with 55-year-olds as we are with 25-year-olds. It's not a problem. We are very good at taking new volunteers with no construction experience and finding work for them. So yeah, that's kind of, yeah, that's the now. What do I really want to talk to you about? That is the sort of work that is going on in the UK all around the place. Well, in terms of restoration, well, initially restoration, yeah, the IWA, I got them to form a high-level panel, a collection of big thinkers involved in restoration, to try and properly represent the sector. And their remit really was to consider the barriers to restoration. And we have pondered this long and hard. And yeah, their conclusion was the real barriers. There are, of course, lots of barriers: training, funding, all that sort of thing. Their two real conclusions, the two barriers that are much harder to do, is about credibility and the value of your restoration. What is it worth? Why should we bother? And also, well, have you actually got a fully credible project? Have you, the classic example to use the Stroud is, what is the point in restoring that lock when you definitely can't get under the motorway it leads to? There's a huge barrier in the way. So what is the point? And equally, there are lots of societies around the country in the UK going, the problem is we have no credibility because we haven't got a perfect set of solutions. Yeah. And I'm sorry to say, for an organization that feels very much a doing organization, an activity organization, our output on our way of dealing with that was 2 reports that we published. I am sorry for that, but there comes a time when reports need to be written. Our 2 reports were Waterways in Progress and Waterways for Today, and they were both an attempt to deal with the credibility gap, as we called it. You know, why are we restoring this when you haven't got it all sorted out? And also, why should we put so much money into, or what feels like so much money into, waterways? So the first report, Waterways in Progress, I actually launched this at Athlone at the Waterways Canals Conference, so I'll speed through it because hopefully you're across it. But the point about Waterways in Progress was it was absolutely about showing that even individual points along the way are absolutely of value. They deliver the benefits straight away. So indeed, it says that the vision to turn unfinished business to everyone's advantage. Yes, we can't restore the entire waterway yet, but absolutely. For instance, this is the Hollingwood hub on the Chesterfield Canal. And you can see, even though, well, the canal either side of that lock isn't really restored in any way, by God, that is a hell of a contribution to the community. It clearly is exactly what it's called, a hub. It clearly is lots of activity, lots of people enjoying the waterway, lots of people getting benefits from it. So our Waterways in Progress was all about restoration schemes are not just a means to an end. They have a life of their own and can bring quantifiable benefits at every stage. This was a real attempt to push the benefits of restoring waterways, and the fact that, yes, just every bit of investment works. It was split out into 4 themes, which I'll just rattle through here, and basically had good examples and good writing of those. good examples of how you don't have to restore the whole waterway to get benefits. And this was our final kind of flurry of text. Dream big, be bold, press for full-length navigation, but never forget along the way that opportunity knocks at every stage. And that absolutely was our first message and our attempt to address that credibility gap. That naturally flowed onto the next report, which was Waterways for Today, which was absolutely about valuing the whole waterway, giving appropriate value. It's not just a niche project for boaters, it's not a niche project for enthusiasts. It absolutely brings benefits to the whole of the UK. The waterways network is valuable. So this is a report that came out of the restoration side of IWI. But basically, you know, waterways for today, because as you can clearly see, they are part of modern life. You know, waterways can be integrated fully. This is the middle of London, pretty much, and absolutely, it's part of living. Yeah, so waterways for today. The report basically came up with 12 benefits and some other bits to buy, but 12 benefits that we worked very hard on and worked out. They weren't just benefits for the local place. They weren't just benefits for you know, the people who live there. They weren't just benefits for certain companies or whatever. Genuinely, there were 12 benefits that helped the whole of the UK. They were of benefit to all the UK, no matter where they were. And yes, we split them into benefit again into different types of benefit, because obviously, you know, different audiences. Economic benefits, I'll come back to benefit 3 actually, because I think that's a really good example. Benefits 4 to 6 were natural and built environment. Again, protecting waterways heritage for future generations, because to me, one of the wonderful things about waterways heritage is it really, firstly, it tells local history. Obviously, it's about the place it's in, the power of place, but it is also about the whole waterways heritage. Really does tell the history of a very significant time in your country's history, and it is there, and it is still usable. Those old locks still work. You can't say that about Windows or Macs, can you? Anyway, very important benefit 6, planning for resilience and climate change. Again, I will bring that on as well. And also benefits to communities, education and young people. I know myself and Joe very much agree with this. Waterways are a fantastic educational resource in terms of explaining to people how you use engineering to work with nature to your benefit. You know, waterways are wonderful in terms of, you know, explaining about engineering principles, in terms of how it works, and it's generally not destructive in any way. You know, it is waterways are a wonderful way of illustrating good engineering practices and principles. And yes, benefits 10 to 12, of which benefit 12, creating better places to live. Who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want that? It's clearly a benefit to the whole of the UK. Of those benefits, which we outlined, obviously, we generated some nice, appropriate, inspirational text for it. But we also, for each benefit, generated facts and statistics. So, you know, the inland leisure marine industry supports 133,000 jobs. That's not insignificant. 133,000 jobs, absolutely, and indeed 2.5 billion to the economy each year. That's not insignificant, and that's just benefit 1. But the most important thing I want to say about this is what we did for all of those benefits is we found perfectly good, justifiable, independent academic reports, based, you know, high quality reports that actually were clearly written, that were applicable. And all these reports said, we're talking here about, for instance, Scotland, but actually this will be applicable all over the UK. You know, all of that. And that was, to me, was the most important thing about this report is, yes, it outlined 12 benefits. That's great. That's wonderful. But actually, it was firstly provided genuine academic proof about them, and also proven that they could be applied all over the place. So these are genuinely benefits that genuinely benefit the whole of the UK. We also got some celebrity endorsements for these various benefits, which I'll flash through because I realised that probably half the audience won't know these people, so let's ignore that. But what was really important to me is that whole issue of these are benefits to all. And just as an example, I'm going to pull open benefit 3, and I'll read for the stats we generated. And we found a university academic report which had studied life for 18 years in Glasgow, and found that people living within 700 meters of the newly regenerated Forth and Clyde Canal had a 15% lower risk of suffering from cardiovascular disease, stroke, or hypertension, and a 12% lowered risk of diabetes and obesity. That means less NHS spending, less national health spending, less social welfare spending, and obviously, in a country these days, that's a benefit to everyone. The fact that you're not spending it, then the benefit is occurring in Glasgow, is still 15% more spending that you can actually apply all over the country. I could use the same arguments about things like climate change and resilience to the effects of climate change. These are all benefits. Jobs created create tax revenue. Everybody benefits from that. These are all genuinely benefits that apply to absolutely everyone. So our target audience, of course, was politicians, government departments, local authorities, but actually, I think it's true to say that our real audience was the general public, because the purpose of this report really was to move the public's understanding of waterways networks. Very few people really understand what benefits they actually provide. They are more than happy to value their rail network, their road network. To be blunt, they even value generally their sewage network, whatever. Do they value the waterways network? Do they understand the benefits that come to them? Possibly not. And so absolutely, this was the purpose of this report. And what we also found, I made some recommendations, is that, of course, the report, which talks about the benefits of waterways, are just as valid for recommendation 1 there, just as valid for current navigable waterways. If it's worth restoring, it's certainly worth keeping the navigation. And recommendation 4 there says, and by the way, if you're happy and think that you are getting good value from your thousands of miles of waterways, why would you not restore the 500 more derelict canals you've still got? 500 more miles derelict canals you've still got. So it moved from a restoration agenda to a actual navigation agenda as well, which did mean we could finish off with our final payoff on this report was Waterways for Today demonstrates the benefits that well-maintained or regenerated or restored waterways can bring to the whole country. And that absolutely was this attempt to address that barrier that we put up, is that people don't value waterways when we think they should. We believe in waterways. And this report, as it happens, right now, our National Navigation Authority, Canal and River Trust, is in negotiation with government about its funding. And I heard from the member of parliament who is leading these negotiations that the government were very, very impressed with this report. They felt firstly, the report itself was unbiased. It had been written by an independent group, but also it referred to genuine academic reports and genuine kind of studies and things. And therefore, it's hopefully really, really valuable. And for anybody out there, I would recommend having a think about whether do you have that report in your area, region, country. Do you actually have that thing of pulling together all, having a proper snapshot of what waterways are worth? Because if you're asking anybody to fund either a restoration or a regeneration or even just maintenance, they've got to understand what the worth of it is, and the value to it is to the whole country, not just to independent, not just to a few niche people. People need to understand the waterways make a contribution, the waterways network make a contribution just like the road network, the rail network, all sorts of other networks. And I think, oh yes, indeed, those are the 12 benefits. I don't expect you to read them now, but I'm pretty sure that those 12 benefits apply no matter where you are. I'm pretty sure that, and perhaps you've got a 13th, who knows, or whatever. I think that the way we worked on it, I think it came out good. And I think those 12 benefits are almost certainly going to be used, and proving the worth of those to your funders, your protectors, your stakeholders, I think is very important. Right, that's my kind of summary. Restoration in the UK is absolutely going ahead. It's all fine, but actually we've moved to a political stance at the moment, a genuine campaigning stance about proving the value. Yeah, that's me.
WCC Online is brought to you by Inland Waterways International, better known as IWI, TICI, the International Committee for the Conservation of Industrial Heritage, and the Society for Industrial Archaeology.